Okay, this is a video on the Lakeside Cove Lg. It comes in two different sizes. There's the Lakeside Cove. This one happens to be the Lakeside Cove Lg, and it's approximately 3 by 4.5 inches. It's kind of what I consider kind of the foundational image for the entire Stampscapes line. It was kind of that way from the start, and it's remained one of my favorite images within the line. It can be used as both a lake, or if you don't color in the reflections, you could easily make this into a meadow. It's very universal in the ways that you can use it. It looks great in white, let's say embossed in white or silver or metallic over like a dark cardstock. Or you can certainly do it in black, which I use it most of the times. And it can be done in a variety of media. And not only that, it's one of those images that's just dark enough, okay, in most of the trees and the reflections down here, but it has this open area in the water, meaning that when that's like that, you can stamp it first, or you can do an entire background, like for example, a brayered background, and you can just stamp right over the top of it because it's dark and solid enough and silhouette in nature enough where it can hold up against whatever type of background you already have. Some people like to do this method of scenic stamping called photo stamping, where you're stamping it onto a photograph with a bunch of clouds in the background. And because this is a lake, you can have whatever's going on up in the sky as well as the water, and it looks just fine. So anyways, I usually don't do too many like specific stamp related videos just on a singular stamp that's really super popular, but I thought, well, this one is kind of one of those foundational elements that I have. It comes in nature set number 8, and it's one of those stamps that I use all the time because it's just, I'm really super familiar with it. It's, like I said, it's completely universal. So a lot of times when I want to try a new technique or something like that, and I don't want to have to really think about the composition too much as far as what I want to do with it, I often do use the Lakeside Cove Lg stamp just to stamp like a quick composition out and to try various media. And when I was looking back at some of the scenes that I did for this video series using the Lakeside Cove, I found a ton of them here, and this is probably not all of them right here, but I maybe use it too much. But here, I thought I would flip through a few of these examples to begin with. Just so we can see, some sort of background, if you haven't seen these stamps used before especially. Okay, but anyways, this is what they call stamp board right here, and it is a hardboard panel with a clay surface on it. Here's Lakeside Cove stamped out from a compositional aspect. It covers pretty much the entire width of this board, okay? And what we have here is a reflection of that moon down in the water. I think that sky figures often set the mood for a scene, and I really like the fact that in water scenes you could stamp it, your sky, down in the water again, so we can have sky in both the sky and in the surface of a certain landscape, and it creates for a nice dramatic setting for those types of situations. Okay, photographers love mirrored types of imagery, so you can do that in landscape stamping, of course. All right, here's something where I was playing around with these light beams, just doing my Lakeside Cove right here. Stamp the Lakeside Cove in a brown to push it back into the scene a little bit more, and then I have the darker foreground images making for a kind of a space that seems a little bit deeper and more, say, three-dimensional by the use of various values. This one was kind of playing around with some, I don't even remember now. It was a glitter ink. Okay, so you can see that little, maybe you can see it, I'm not sure. put that little touch in here as a reflective type of ink in the water. Kind of creating kind of that sparkly effect. You can't really tell here, but then when it catches the light a little bit, it shows just little calm little settings. I was playing around with this new kayaker stamp, I believe. Here's the Lakeside Cove. Okay, you don't color it with the reflections down here, and I just used my oh, this is the sedge filler in there? No, it isn't. It's the, oh, I just used it the other day. It's this sedge cluster stamp used down here. So anyways, you can use kind of any type of grassy texture, and it becomes a meadow, okay? So it's just picking and choosing whatever you want to stamp out off of a scenic stamping element. I don't know where that little sedge cluster is, but I don't know, it looks something like this, but it has a little bit of rock texture below. Using mountains in the background. This one's on, no, this one's on glossy cardstock. I did another one of these on matte cardstock as well. Green tone scenes. I love the green emerald colored scenes. Here's another one right here. Oh, this is for video number 200, I think. I had my son stamp a scene out. This is his right here. This one's mine. Oh, just various things. This is a kind of more of a, it looks brayered, but it isn't. I just kind of wipe the colors on here. And then over this colored swatch background, I call it like a split rainbow in graphic arts, like with screen printing. But this one, I think I just sponged those colors in there. But colors were already established, and I just stamped the Lakeside Cove right over the top of it. Here's another one of those reflective types of things, just stamping the cloud with lightning up here and turning it upside down, re-inking, and then just stamping it upside down makes for a nice dramatic type of situation here. This one's unfinished. I think it was just talking about sky figures. But anyways, we have a lot of heavy sky figures in the background. But see, even with all that kind of busyness going up here, I just stamped that Lakeside Cove right over the top of it. And then I would bring some extra colors in here, and I'd color in some of these rocks and whatnot. But just to say that you can pretty much almost stamp anything going on in the background, and then you can just stamp the Lakeside Cove right over the top of it. And like I said, I would get toned in just like this. You know, so those colors of the background that are showing up in these rocks right here is not really a problem once you start bringing in tone into those rocks with additional color applications. Here's another, I thought there was two. Oh, there is, oh, this is the scene that I was looking for. I couldn't find it. These two were stuck together, but here's this moon stamped again down here. This one's the Erie moon, kind of done in more of a grayscale type of situation. Remaining rocks in there are kind of illuminated, but anyways. And this is kind of fun. This is a image by Leavenworth Jackson, but I had him kind of crying into the water, but you can see these little ripples down here. It kind of gives a really different spirit to it, you know, same image, but, you know, kind of a different spirit altogether, you know, just by changing your color scheme around. Here's an example of kind of a similar color scheme. You can tell that there's different blues used in this one. This is just stamping out that Lakeside Cove in the dark blue, and then, you know, retaining the blacks for the foreground imagery really pushes the depth. So here this one is, and having this in black really brings it kind of forward a little bit. But then this one right here, I wanted to push it back in the distance a little bit. So this is my little funky thing of these little tears coming down and dripping into the water. But see that ripples down here kind of give it a real still type of feeling. Clouds reflected in the water here. This one was the use of alcohol inks in the water, giving it kind of more of an impressionistic feel. I didn't know what I felt about this one when I first stamped it out, but I kind of like it now more than when I initially started coloring it in. But it gives a different feel than, say, this one right here. This one's the alcohol inks. This one's just dye-based inks right here. This one looks a little bit dull, and I would bring, you know, some more intensity back into it with some additional tones. But You can really get kind of specific down here as far as your color applications with things like alcohol pens. Nice jeweled tone, kind of sunset scene. Another kayaker. You can see where I used a lot of the gel pens touches down here. This is really textured. You know, I can feel these raised little bumps, little gel pens on the rocks to illuminate things. This is kind of your foundation element, you know, doing a stamp sketch, and this is where I've brought in additional trees in the background to really push that depth. Here's kind of one single layer of just the Lakeside Cove Lg, and this is using the pine row in the background. You can see where you can really push the depth of some additional trees. And if I wanted to, I could have taken that stamp again and stamped it in the reflection as well. It would have been kind of an interesting touch. There's all kinds of things you can do. This is a black piece of paper, but then I just kind of fogged it in the background with some white pigment ink, and then I stamped over it again with the Lakeside Cove, so it would stand up against the black, or the white, I guess, glowing background. I don't know, this one, I wish this Lakeside Cove came out darker, but I was stamping it into that white pigment ink that I kind of just sponged into there, so it kind of absorbed a lot of that color, and the impression of it didn't come out as dark as I would have wanted. Maybe I should use like a VersaFine or something like that. Aurora Borealis, upright, turned upside down again. This is Lakeside Cove is stamped really low on the horizon to give more room for the sky imagery. This one right here was using some iridescent inks. Okay, you can kind of see it there reflected. Not a great scene or anything like that, but I just kind of wanted to see that kind of extra shimmer created by the iridescence. I'm always trying to play around with that type of aspect in water. I want to do something. This is a matte piece of paper instead of the glossy with that same composition that I just showed a few minutes ago. There's a real similar composition right here, you know. Just using different color schemes, it can really change the spirit of the scene. A lot of people like kind of aqua blues and whatnot. This is a scene right here where I did a card format, but I put the scene on the interior spread. It goes like that. That's from a 100 proof press as well, so kind of pushing that back in the distance right there, using a lot of white pigment inks to give the scene a certain type of mood. Okay. Stamp sketches. This is a scene that I just did recently, just kind of showcasing the idea of tone on the rocks right here. Okay, you get these rocks right here, and it looks pretty good in terms of the tonal nature of the design, giving some kind of mass to those rocks by having different levels of stippling done, you know, to create those shadows. But this is where I just showed the use of some gray tones in these rocks to really reinforce this idea of volumes, okay, by adding a little bit of shade to these rocks down here. And I did the same thing up in this background Rocky Peaks image. There it is down here in the reflections. I haven't colored this in, but this one was just about kind of adding some additional tones in your shadows. Okay, but oh, here's another kind of a flame style Aurora Borealis, Northern Lights type of image. But anyways, I'm going to show you something on this image. This image kind of, you know, the use of it pretty much speaks for itself. There's different things you can do to it, but I'll show you a couple little tweaks here. And that image has been used in a million different lessons. You can see it on our website too. Just bring up 049G Lakeside Cove Lg stamp module, and you'll find a bunch of examples of it underneath the image, and then you'll see all of the embedded videos, and I'll be embedded this video into that stamp module as well. But anyways, I'll tell you a little bit about this stamp right here and a couple of the different little tweaks that I like to do with it, okay? Alright, this is inked up in its entirety, alright? It's one of those things, right? If you want more sky, then you stamp it lower. If you want more water, stamp it higher. If you want it equal, put it somewhere in the middle, okay? Same thing goes for the vertical. If you want more sky and surface of the water, then just stamp it from a landscape format to a portrait format. Alright, let me do this. landscape, just so that I have some room off to my sides here. Plenty of pressure in the middle of the scene. Okay. And we have these areas off to the side. There's a couple of different things that you can do. Well, there's many things you can do. You can have like larger trees out here so that it makes it look like the cove is coming around closer to you. But every time you re-ink this, if you want to carry that one image out to the sides, then just do adequate overlaps, 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch or so. Okay, see, I only need to ink up this part. And then come over here. And you can change the height of it a little bit too if you want to. Let me go down a little bit more on this side. Okay. Now we have all this area to fill in, but do you see where I have this kind of stronger line down here? Now that tone is in there for a certain reason. That's so you can kind of create gradations within your impression itself. But let's say I have this kind of harder line down in here, okay? What I would do is I would fill it in with some additional textures, like this water texture stamp. I don't have that. Let me go grab my water texture stamp. Okay, this is the water pattern small stamp, okay? Now, this stamp can be used in different types of tones. Now, this scene right here is done in a blue color scheme, but if you'll notice, I've used blue tones for my ripples, okay? Doesn't mean you can't use this in black, but what I usually do is this image is usually used in a color reflective of the color scheme within the scene. Let me see if I can find one of those kind of more sunsetty looking ones. And let's see if I've used it in one of those. Okay, this one's a little bit different. This is using that image called shimmering. Okay, but it's real similar to the water texture, but you can see my textures are done more in color, reflective of the colors within the scene, okay? Let me see. I don't know. Let me just do it right here. Okay, but here's what you do on this. Here's one of those little tweaks that can take your scene from good to, I think, one step richer, let's say. All right? So let's say I'm just doing a monochromatic scene, and this scene is going to be all in black and white. Okay, here's your water pattern stamp, okay? Now I'm taking this, and I'm stamping it in its full color, okay? Full impression, okay? Inking it up, taking it in here, okay? But now in the lighter areas, what I can do is I can stamp out a lighter version of this, okay? So on the sides, I have darker impressions, or more of them too, all right? And lighter, so that we have this area in the center that's a little bit more illuminated, I would say, because the impressions of your water stamp are lighter. Now, if this was like a scene that was blue, what I can use is a light blue in the center here where your lighting is going to be, and I would use medium blues where it gets a little bit darker, and then a darker blue out here. Okay? So anyways, that's how you kind of eradicate that line down there if you've already stamped it out. Okay, now here's one of those really simple tweaks that's much more easy to integrate into a scene, okay? What I mean by that is, okay, after you ink that up, all you have to do is take this. Let's say if I'm going to stamp this really high in the horizon, if this is stamping this below in the horizon, then you don't need to worry about this line because it's going to be stamping off the page. But here's what you do. I've inked this up. Now, what I'm doing is I'm taking a good amount of ink off the base of this scene, okay? Like so. Good, I don't know, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch maybe. Dry paper towel. And what I'm doing is I'm creating a little bit of variation off the bottom of this. So it's really dry down here, medium dry right here, and it's full saturation up there. So when I stamp this out, it's wet to dry, and it should stamp dark to light. So we get this nice transition in here. And here in these reflections of the trees, I like to give a little streak, you know, to that. So that kind of has this kind of streakier type of look to it. In my impression, which kind of it's more reflective of water. Okay, now you can stamp this scene out too. You can color these trees green, rocks gray, or whatever. You can have variations of color within your impression itself if you color this up with like some Marby pens or just your dye-based markers. Okay, I'm just doing it in straight black, but anyways, you can see this line. Okay. It's much lighter. Okay, so when you blend in your additional tones, this tonal area is much lighter to begin with, okay? And see where I've kind of gone in here? It looks more gray, right? So we're going from dark to light like that, you know? And it would stand to reason that in the shadows, your reflections would be a little bit darker, right? All right, so that's what you do for that. That's one tweak. Okay, now that being said, one of the things that I like to do too, let's say, for example, I'm not going to do the whole scene, but let's say, for example, I don't always do this, like right here. Like if I'm going to have some, like a light source behind these trees, one of the things you can do is you can make your trees a little bit lighter and kind of give your scene a little bit of a head start as far as your lighting scheme within a scene. Now these trees are solid enough where you can do this. You can't do it with a scene that's too airy, you know. So if you take off any ink off of it, you might not be able to see it. Alright, I'll tell you what I mean by that, okay? So ink up. Let's do something like here with the base of it. So wiping some of that ink off, giving a few little streaks in the shadows. Alright, now let's say that I'm going to have a moon or a sun or something like that shining from behind, let's say, these trees right here. I'm going to take this ink and I'm just going to wipe off that edge a little bit, okay? And maybe on these trees. I'm kind of wiping off one side of them, just kind of putting the paper towel like that. I see. And then I'm kind of wiping it off a little bit like that. Maybe I can do that on this side of the tree as well. So on the insides of the trees, I'll wipe off a little bit of this ink. And what that'll say is, you know, that there's some kind of light source right here. Now, which way should we do this? Let's do this like that. Okay, so you can see this. We have a little bit of variation down here in gray tones. And look at this right here. See that? It looks like light is hitting those trees. So if I do something like I don't know, like a moon like this, I can have light shining off some of these trees. I think I did a little bit here. I think that's a little bit lighter right there than the other side. It could be pigment ink that I've also placed on here too, but it kind of sets a mood, and it's an easy technique. It's easy enough to just wipe off some ink before you do it. And you'll already get some kind of this idea of lighting within a scene. Alright? Alright. Now I've done this in a previous video. I think it was one of my first videos talking about how to use imagery and altering your imagery for your own usage. Okay, this is just stamping out the Lakeside Cove, taking this and really wiping off a good area at the base of the rocks where you would have the reflections of the trees shining, you know, reflecting in the water. Alright, so I'm just going to stamp this down like that. I've really wiped off a lot of those reflections. Now, if I just was using this for the first time today, I wouldn't really need to, you know, I just wouldn't color in the base there, you know, so got a big piece of lint there. Anyways, so you can see a little of that showing. Maybe I didn't wipe it off quite enough, but it doesn't really matter though. Let's just take our black ink right here. Now, if I was doing this in grass and this grass was going to be green, maybe I would ink this up in a dark green or something like that. But let's just keep this as a stamp sketch right here. But here's some different grasses. This is the sedge cluster stamp. Okay. So I'm just adding some grass down here. Maybe I want some taller grass in the foreground. Let's go with the grass texture here like this. Maybe something like that. It's a little bit of change in texture. A little bit of a change in depth within the scene. So it's kind of fun, you know. I always encourage people to really play around with their scenic stamps and really see how far you can take them beyond what they are as an image themselves, okay? So just don't use them in their entirety. Here you have Lakeside Cove, you know, and here you have whatever, meadow and rocks or something like that. It'd be kind of cool to put a few other rocks within this grass to carry on the idea of these rocks being in this type of setting, but any type of sky figure you want up there, you can do. And that's about that. Now, I was going to show you something here, too. Here's a scene with that I did for another lesson, previous lesson. I don't know, it's okay. It's a little bit boring. Not that what I'm going to do now is going to, you know, add this suddenly, you know, this element of extreme richness or something like that, but using portions for what you want of stamp design, you don't always have to have. I mean, the main thing I would say are probably these trees in here and the nice kind of silhouette of the trees, but let's just use this as for the base, okay? Here, and I'll put this Lakeside Cove roughly about like so. I'm trying to be careful not to put these shadows over the top of that sailboat because I want that sailboat to still show up, but I'm just using these for the rocks, you know. I'm putting kind of a, you know, rocky shoreline on the other side of this, so it's kind of creating this lake in here. See that right there? So you don't even have to have the whole thing. And then what do we have out here? We have this open area. So let's do the same thing, just color it in, a little wipe off, take this and put it here. Like I said, this is a very universal stamp, you know. You can stamp it after the fact, you can put it, you know, you can do a complete composition, you know, in the beginning and then color it in, but it's pretty much, you know, fine with being, in this case, like an afterthought, okay? It's kind of nice, you know, in terms of compositionally, having that background row of rocks in there kind of created a little bit more of a sense of space in here, you know, by having that imagery back there, and it added in some extra texture, but, you know, you can barely see the trees. You can see those little distant ones, you know, but I thought that worked out really well for something like this, and that would be good to go in here and add some additional tone and color it in, but I'm not going to get into all of that type of thing right now. Here's this cloud scene. I mean, I could stamp this, you know, it's all in black right now, but you can stamp this down here, and you can have this kind of opening in the sky like that if you want to, and work out whichever way. Be kind of interesting. But anyways, there is the Lakeside Cove Lg stamp. You can see from like this gigantic stack of scenes, and that's not all of them, I'm sure. Just from this video series, I tend to use it a lot. It's kind of my go-to stamp, and having a kind of a go-to stamp like this, for me, or it could be any stamp in your I don't know, your collection of stamps that you have, it's kind of fun to have or it's kind of good to have one that, you know, can give you a scene quickly without too much thought. It's very universal, so that, and all of you, you know, I'm sure can relate to this as rubber stampers or crafters, you know, sometimes you don't do it, you know. Let's say you get busy and you don't stamp for 3 weeks or something like that, you know. I feel like I get kind of rusty, you know, and I have to kind of get my brain back in a certain mode, but I like to just do a quick, like what I call it, like almost like a doing scales in music or something like that, you know. You can just go down there and sit down there and start doing it. With this, I can just come up with these, you know, simple compositions or whatever, and just tone them in and whatnot. And that's just, for me, it's like just like doing some kind of simple, um, I don't know, routine to get me back into kind of the mode of any given technique that I want to kind of play around with. And I think for me, the Lakeside Cove is the one that I utilize the most often for that type of exercise. So, happens sometimes, you know, you might start designing some stamps, new stamps or something like that, and I don't stamp for a while, so when I get back to it, I usually pull this out. I just say, I want to do something quick, and it's fun to get this back in my hand, get some inks going, you know, using stylus tools or whatever I happen to be using, and just color it in, and it gives me a really fast, quick and easy scene, you know, in terms of the composition and whatnot. So anyways, Lakeside Cove Lg, a nice formidable, universal, very easy to use stamp within the range of stamps in the Stampscapes lineup of images. Okay, thanks for watching.